Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about one of the really serious scams that people pull in the fitness world. This can be coaches, it can be personal trainers, and it's when they tell people you're not losing weight, right? You're not losing weight because you're not eating enough. And again, they try to pull this whole nonsense of your metabolism's too low, your energy's too low, and here's the thing, that's complete nonsense. Now, I do not advocate that people go on really, really low calorie diets or that they try to lose weight really quickly for any reason ever. The research on why is pretty good because number one, they rebound later, right? The faster you lose weight, the less sustainable what you are doing is going to be in the long term. The other problem with it is that it's nonsense. We know starvation mode and all of these things do not exist. They have been very well documented in labs, studies going back for decades, large-scale studies such as the Minnesota starvation experiment. All these metabolic ward studies that we look at show that people do not ever stop losing body fat when calories go very, very low. In other words, when you start talking about crazy things like 1,000-calorie diets, and again, the exception might be, okay, a 4'10" woman who's 105 pounds and barely exercises. Okay, we don't need these extreme examples, okay? These are very, very, very rare people. We're talking about situations where women are put on 1,000 calories or men are on 1,200 or 1,400 who are physically active. All right, when calories are dropped that low, a person never, ever, ever stops losing body fat, ever. And the scale continually goes down. Now, you'll get people who say, well, I have clients who they do that and the scale stops. Or someone says, well, I did that and the scale stops. Well, there's a better explanation than starvation mode for that because when it's controlled in the lab, that never happens. You also don't see fat people in starving countries. It does not happen. Right? None of these people hold on to their body weight. You don't see women who are stuck at 150 pounds in countries where they have access to no food. It does not happen, ever. And it doesn't happen in the metabolic ward. You know what we actually find? That the people just aren't tracking correctly. And when it's looked at in a metabolic ward, here's the most interesting thing. When calories go really, really low, humans start to develop psychosis. They start to develop psychosis. Well, what do we mean there? They get food amnesia. And I'm not saying that as a mean thing. I'm not saying that if that's happened to you that it's a funny thing. And it's not making light of the fact, but when we've studied people in the metabolic world, and I say we, I mean the human race. Every time I say that, I get some stupid ass clown who comes in and says, oh, you mean you conducted the research? No, you ignoramus. I mean, we as a human race, and all of us have access to this data. I don't mean that I personally work at a metabolic ward. It's just, sorry, a little rant there, but I get that all the time, and I just have to ban idiots for saying stuff like that. They know exactly what I mean. So when we put people on a metabolic ward and they're filmed 24 hours a day, people who think that they're eating 1,200 calories when they're tracked and watched, binge and do 2,000 calorie binges in the middle of the day sometimes, and then completely forget that they do it. And it's, again, this is a psychosis that's created to keep you from starving. And we found that women are more prone to it than men, which makes sense for biological reasons. Women cannot afford to get to certain body weights and body fats. It's actually more problematic for women as far as health and reproductive health and things than it is for men. So these defense mechanisms kick in harder for women. It's actually a good thing. It keeps them alive. It's actually a survival thing. It's actually good. So it's not a negative statement to say that, hey, this happens with women at a higher rate. No, it means certain parts of women's brains are wired to keep them alive. This is actually a good thing. It's not an insult in any way. Again, it means they have certain survival mechanisms that are better. To where you will binge and then forget that you ate it and will not be able to remember it. To the point where when they're shown this stuff, some of the people, the participants, because they swear they didn't do it, when they're then shown the footage of them eating and binging on the extra food, which could be sometimes double the food they think they're eating, they're sometimes binging in a single meal, forgetting and not tracking when calories are put really, really low. Okay, and they're supposed to adhere to it. When they see the footage, they start crying and get really upset because they can't remember doing it when they're watching themselves do it. They have proof and they can't remember it. It's actually quite traumatic for many of the test subjects when this has been looked at. It actually had a very traumatic effect on them. Because it is, you forget that you've done something and you swear you didn't do it and you know you didn't do it, and then you see the video footage of you doing it. Because people think they're losing their minds. And they are. So psychosis comes with these really, really low calorie diets. But you never stop losing body fat. Now, here's the problem with it. It's dangerous. It's harmful to your health. It will make adherence more difficult in the long term. When people go on these really low calorie diets, if they actually are doing it successfully, you lose muscle mass much more quickly. You lose a lot of muscle tissue. So let's come over to the point on scale weight. Actually, you probably will lose weight even faster when you're losing muscle because it takes a less calorie burn to strip a pound of muscle off than it does a pound of fat when you're tapping into muscle tissue for weight loss. Well, when muscle tissue goes down, your metabolic rate drops dramatically. It's not all these, oh, I've hit starvation mode, so my metabolism is dropping. No. Loss of muscle tissue lowers metabolic rate. Losing fat does too, but not to the extreme that muscle does. So their metabolism is slowing down because they're losing muscle tissue. Their energy is going down. You will start having health problems. I mean, losing weight too quickly could in many cases cause organ damage. Right? It's not good. But here's the thing. When you have coaches who tell people, oh, you're not losing weight because you're not eating enough, that's a lie. It's nonsense. Okay, when they increase your calories, it's a trick that coaches play on people to pretend that they know more. So, for example, if you have stalled in your weight loss due to hormonal reasons, it's your body reaching homeostasis. You've never stopped losing body fat. A lot of times our body will hold on to weight for several weeks. When we've lost 5 or 6 pounds, it will use water weight to replace the tissue that we've lost while it reaches homeostasis. And because things like cortisol and stuff go up, you hold on to a little more water. It's temporary. Okay, it's not real weight. It's not weight that's going to stay on you. And it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It's not like this is, oh, I lost some water, now I'm in good shape. Well, no, losing water weight will technically reduce your metabolism slightly. You're actually in a better state while you're holding the water in terms of continuing to lose tissue, and it's temporary anyways. They'll up their carbohydrates a little bit. They'll up their food a little bit. What happens? It lowers cortisol. Cortisol goes down, they drop the water weight. Cortisol does not make you gain fat. That's also a myth. Doesn't happen. It actually helps speed up fat loss. But trainers will do this, or the person has been cheating on their diet and then they bump their calories up and then they actually start eating less because they think they're given more calories or whatever. Or they just hit finally a natural switch in their diet, and then all of a sudden, I dropped 3 pounds overnight. I dropped 3 pounds, 4 pounds in 2 days. This coach, they're so right, they're so brilliant. In reality, they're not. You were losing body fat just fine. You were losing body fat just fine. You didn't lose any faster when they bumped your calories up at all. You just finally, it lowered cortisol slightly and you peed out the extra water you've been holding while your body's been sitting in trying to find homeostasis. Okay, but it's not a good thing. Like psychologically you might think it is, but this didn't help you in any way. If anything, it might have hindered you. If your calories were appropriate, at an appropriate level, it hindered you. Now, I will say they are good because they try to take people to smaller deficits, which is good for muscle retention. It's good for long-term adherence. Right? It's good for these things because that muscle retention is important for keeping the weight off later. But in and of itself, it's a lie. It's not true. And it's really trickery. And it needs to end. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.